Hello, this is Bill Dawson from suchfuncoding.com. It's Wednesday, March 31st, 2010, and today I'm going to talk about JavaScript, specifically the $ character, which if you peek in some other people's JavaScript code lately, you probably see the $ a lot, and maybe you didn't know what it was. Maybe you thought it was some kind of mysterious JavaScript syntax that you had never learned about or something like that. So we'll talk about that today in this video. There's a blog entry accompanying this video. It's kind of the home base for the video, so I show you the URL at Such Fun Coding here. And in case you're interested, I'm doing this slideshow using JavaScript itself, specifically a presentation plugin for jQuery by Trevor Davis. So I show you the URL here in case you're interested in trying it out. Okay, let's get started. So if you're looking at it and you don't know what it is, and the $ might seem a bit scary, I'm showing here a typical example of something you might see today. Now, before I knew anything about it, I definitely thought this looked like some sort of magical JavaScript operation or incantation. It kind of stands alone there next to those parentheses. There's no other letters or underscores or anything like that joining it, so it doesn't really look like an identifier of any kind. And that's kind of what makes it look magical. It's kind of standing alone, and like I said, it doesn't look like the name of a variable or the name of a function or anything like that. So if you come across this and you already feel like you don't know JavaScript that well, you may be thinking to yourself, okay, this is something about the JavaScript language that I haven't learned yet. And it's a bit mysterious. You'll look at it and maybe run away or something. Let's look at a specific example. Here's a gigantic example here. It's the source code from the Amazon, it's not Amazon, the AOL.com homepage. Let's say you're scrolling through it maybe because you've seen something tricky and cool on the AOL page and you want to look at the source to see if you can find out how they did it. And if you haven't had a lot of experience with JavaScript in the last few years, and you come across this stuff with all these crazy $ everywhere, you might be thinking, what the heck is this? Or let's look at a simpler, much more contrived example, a page that I created here. It's an ugly web page. It's got a bunch of these alternating divs on it, with the class names even, odd, and so on. And the odd classes are showing this terrible ugly red background, and maybe you're wondering, how can you change that? You have access to the source code, so you want to see where the red background's being put in and maybe change it. So you've got the sources here. I'll show them. It's divided here into two panes. The top pane is the HTML itself. You can see these alternating classes here, alternating divs. And then there's the style sheet down below. So you're looking in the style sheet to try to figure out, you can see in the actual HTML that there's nothing specifying that the background for the odd divs should be red. So you're checking through the CSS now, you're looking through, and yeah, maybe you see a few things relating to color, but none of them seem to be related to divs with the class odd, so it's not in there. So you go back to the HTML, you're scrolling through some more, you look at the top to see if there's any inline CSS code, and there's not. You're looking through and, there's some inline JavaScript near the bottom here. Now this is definitely what's causing the red backgrounds on the odd classes, but you don't know what the heck's going on. You're not sure how this is being done. Is this some sort of strange JavaScript notation that you know nothing about? So you see it, you get a bit scared, and you give up because it looks a bit mysterious. Well, the fact of the matter is it's not scary at all. It's not mysterious. The $ is simply a valid identifier in JavaScript. In other words, it can be used as the name of a variable, or, for example, as the name of a function. I can prove that real quick by looking at the JavaScript specification. It's actually called the ECMA script specification. That's the official name for JavaScript. And you can see that the creators of the specification specifically mentioned that the $ is permitted anywhere in an identifier. And in fact, it can be used all by itself as an identifier. And you can use it if you want. You could, for example, set a variable with the name of just the $ character, set its value to a string, and then alert it, and this would give you back what you'd expect, a pop-up that shows you hello world. So even though you could do that, I would recommend that you don't, because these days you're going to have a high likelihood of colliding with popular JavaScript libraries like jQuery or Prototype, which use the $ character. I'm going to talk about jQuery here only because at the moment it seems to be the most popular JavaScript library. So the chances are when you come across the $, it's probably, it's a high chance that it's referring to something that jQuery is doing. And in jQuery's case, the $ is actually referring to a function. So like I said, jQuery is a popular JavaScript library, and the $ is a variable that references a function. Now that sounds a bit weird maybe if you're not familiar with functional programming. What do I mean when I say that a variable is referencing a function? So I'll just give a quick aside on that. Functions in JavaScript are first-class object types. They can be assigned to variables, they can be passed around as parameters, and so on. So it actually makes sense when I say that a function is assigned to a variable. I won't go any deeper than that. In the future I'm going to have another video about JavaScript functions. But I just wanted to explain why it makes sense that the $ in jQuery is assigned to a function. Now in fact, jQuery is a library whose functionality is available through a single function. And that single function has a name called jQuery. But to save you from typing jQuery all the time, the developers gave you a nice shortcut, the $. And here you can see the last few lines of code in the jQuery source code. So in the 1,000 lines previous to these lines, they've been building up this function called jQuery that has all the cool functionality that the jQuery library provides. Now at the very bottom, just before they exit, they're going to assign the jQuery function to the window $$ identifier. Now the window dot part of this is simply the global namespace when you're working inside of a browser. By assigning the jQuery function to window $, they're in fact giving you, a developer who uses jQuery, the ability to call jQuery with simply the $ by itself. You could either call it with window $, but of course that would be typing too much and would defeat the purpose of this nice shortcut of having the $. So when you're typing code that's using jQuery, you can simply refer to it with the $. Now if for some reason you don't want jQuery to use the $ identifier, like maybe you're using jQuery along with Prototype and you want Prototype to use the $, so you want jQuery to give up the use of the $, you can use this method call inside of jQuery called noConflict. If you do that, then jQuery will relinquish its control of the $. So in conclusion, don't be afraid. $ is just a variable name or an identifier. It can be an identifier that refers to a variable of a simple type like a string or an integer, or it can be a variable that refers to a function, just like any other identifier in JavaScript that you create. The $ is just another identifier. It just looks different, and therefore it maybe looks a bit scary. Now when you see it these days, it's most likely a variable that's pointing to a function in a JavaScript library such as jQuery or Prototype. So now that I've shown you that the $ is really just an identifier, that doesn't help you actually understand how jQuery or Prototype or any of these libraries is actually using it. In other words, I haven't explained how jQuery works. So even though you now can look at the $ and know that it's simply an identifier that's pointing probably to a function, you don't actually know how that function works and how jQuery does all of its magic. So to learn that, I suggest you study up on some of those libraries like jQuery, the most popular one at this moment. And maybe I'll do some videos in the future about jQuery. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.